August 10, 1944. Camp Ruston, Louisiana. The heat pressed down like a heavy blanket, thick with the smell of damp earth, sweat, and fear. Inside a locked wooden barrack, 20 German women sat stiff and silent, prisoners waiting. They had been warned what Americans were supposed to be: cruel, violent men who would starve them, mock them, break them. Every story they knew ended the same way. Then a sudden sound shattered the stillness, a sharp knock against the door. Heavy footsteps followed. The hinges groaned as the door slowly opened. What stepped inside was not brutality, it was mercy. Young American guards entered carrying baskets, cigarettes, wrapped bars of chocolate that caught the light. The women screamed at first, pure instinct. Then something else happened. They began to cry, not from fear, but disbelief. Kindness, they realized, could taste sweet. That moment cracked something deep inside them, and what followed would unravel everything they believed about their enemy and about what it meant to be human. Stay with me until the end to hear how this moment changed their lives forever. If you believe history's true power lies not in hatred, but in humanity, like, subscribe, and share. Spring 1943, North Africa. The desert burned under a ruthless sun. German forces were collapsing. The once feared Afrika Korps, which had driven the British nearly to Egypt, was disintegrating. Allied aircraft ruled the skies. Fuel reserves were gone. Supplies vanished. Encirclement was complete. Among the defeated were hundreds of German women nurses, radio operators, clerks, typists, many barely out of their teens. They had been told they were part of a glorious mission, serving the Reich, helping shape Europe's future. What they didn't know was that everything they believed was about to be tested. By May 1943, more than 250,000 Axis troops surrendered in Tunisia. The women were stunned. Back home, propaganda insisted capture meant death, yet here they stood alive, exhausted, hungry. Years later, a diary surfaced with a single line written in shaking ink. We prepared ourselves for cruelty. Instead, they asked if we needed water. They were gathered in makeshift desert camps before transport. Fear filled their thought stories of torture, humiliation, and starvation. Nazi propaganda had painted the Allies as monsters. A nurse named Lau wrote later, "We were told Americans shot prisoners for sport, so we lowered our eyes when they passed. Instead of violence, they saw order. Clean lines, food distribution." Voices. The Americans gave them water and white bread, something none had tasted in months. Trucks arrived loaded with beans, oranges, and medical supplies marked U.S. Army. The contradiction was overwhelming. How could the enemy, described as weak and corrupt, possess such abundance and show restraint? When the women were moved toward transport ships, they stared at massive American flags painted on steel hulls. The harbor air smelled of salt and diesel. Africa burned behind them in the sunset. Ahead lay a land they were taught to hate. One woman later recalled, "We didn't know if we were being sent to labor or prison. We only noticed that everything smelled like soap, not blood." It was only the beginning. The Liberty ship Joseph C. Lincoln departed Bizerti on a sweltering August morning in 1944. Below deck, nearly 800 prisoners were packed together. The air reeked of fuel, metal, and fear. They expected chains, they found bunks. They expected beatings, they received meals, real meals. Each day brought nearly 2,800 calories, equal to American soldiers. Meat, potatoes, butter, coffee. For women used to thin soup and ration bread, it felt unreal. Helga later wrote, "The bread tasted like clouds." Seasickness soon followed. The Atlantic tossed the ship violently. Women lay pale and trembling, clutching buckets. Diesel fumes mixed with sweat and salt water. American guards handed out blankets and medicine. One young guard wrote in his journal, "They flinch when we offer fruit, as if waiting to be struck." The voyage lasted nearly 2 weeks. Slowly, fear softened. The guards were young boys, really. Some smiled. A few shared gum or magazines. One afternoon, music drifted through the ship. "Don't Fence Me In." They didn't know the lyrics, but the rhythm felt free. It didn't match anything they'd been told. For the first time, doubt crept in. The captain announced their destination, Norfolk, Virginia. The name meant nothing to them. America had always been a rumor, a myth. Then one night, as they neared land, lights appeared on the horizon, hundreds glowing like stars. Cities alive with energy. One woman remembered, "At home, we had blackout and silence. Here, the night was bright." Norfolk stunned them. Cranes lifted endless cargo. Trucks and trains moved in perfect coordination. The air smelled of oil and roasted coffee. This was not poverty. A nurse whispered, "If this is collapse, then we never knew wealth." They were processed gently, fingerprinted, examined by doctors who treated malnutrition and illness with care. A medic leaned down and said softly, "You're safe now." Lau later wrote, "I didn't understand the words, but I understood the kindness." Instead of cattle cars, they boarded Pullman coaches with cushioned seats and open windows. As the train rolled south, fields stretched endlessly, towns stood intact. Children waved. No ruins, no smoke. At stops they were given hot meals, stew, bread, pie. Some women cried silently. "We were told Americans were animals," one wrote. Yet the animals were feeding us. When the train crossed into Louisiana, the air turned heavy and sweet. Pine forests lined the tracks. Jazz drifted through open windows. It felt unreal. Then the train slowed. A sign appeared. Camp Ruston. Barbed wire glinted in sunlight, but inside green lawns, flower beds, order. Camp life shattered expectations. Clean barracks, mattresses, running water, hot showers, soap. Guards joked, smiled. Meals came regularly, eggs, sometimes bacon. They ate more than twice what civilians received in Germany. It was the first time I felt full, one nurse wrote, and guilty. They worked in kitchens, laundry, clerical offices, earned small wages for the canteen, learned English words at night. Doctors visited weekly. Penicillin saved lives. Recreation included books, drawing paper, even music. Slowly, fear faded, but never completely. Every knock still froze them. Then came the evening in August 1944. The sun dipped behind pine trees, painting the camp gold. Inside one barrack, women wrote letters or sewed quietly. Suddenly a knock. Silence fell. Memories flooded back. Warnings echoed. The door opened. 2 young American guards stepped inside. No weapons, only baskets. One smiled awkwardly and said, "Merry Christmas." Inside were apples, sugar cookies, and chocolate bars. One woman began to cry. Others followed. They passed the chocolate hand to hand like something sacred. A diary later read, "We screamed when they knocked. We cried when we tasted chocolate. Everything we were taught collapsed in one bite." That night, laughter and tears filled the camp. Kindness had done what force never could. As months passed, gifts arrived from churches and farms, cards from American families addressed simply to German girls. A small Christmas tree appeared. Silent Night was sung first in German, then English. For a moment, there was no war, only people. By 1945, the women saw more. Machines, medicine, fairness, black and white Americans working side by side. Radios playing jazz, once forbidden. Newspapers revealing truths, long hidden. Shame followed understanding. When the war ended, they packed small keepsakes, letters, drawings, chocolate wrappers. Some cried as they said goodbye. One officer said, "You came as prisoners, you leave as witnesses." Germany was ruins. Few believed their stories, but they knew the truth. Years later, many wrote memoirs. One line echoed through them all: "We lost the war, but we found our humanity." America's greatest weapon, they learned, was not bombs or tanks. It was order, it was mercy, it was chocolate.